If you or a loved one are suffering from addiction or alcoholism, I'm here to tell you that there is help out there, even when it doesn't seem that way. You can attend or call the many great anonymous groups in your local community, or, of course, the SAMHSA Drug Addiction National Hotline found at 1-800-662-HELP. They provide free referral service in both English and Spanish 24 hours a day, as well as other information about drug addiction. There are hundreds of books, websites, and other resources, as well as joining us right here on Simply Difficult. This show is not affiliated with AA, NA, or other anonymous groups, just provides another safe place to listen, learn, and recover together. Me, I'm not a licensed professional. My name is Sam Speck, and I, too, am in recovery. I just have a microphone and a will to help myself and others recover. Through this program, we will bring on guests, including professionals in addiction counseling, psychology, and other recovering addicts sharing their advice, stories, and experience through addiction. Shows will be 1 hour long in a variety of big book work, step work, spiritual reading interpretation, DBT training, and professional advice interviews, as well as trying to normalize the simply difficult conversation you need to have with a loved one, or more importantly, yourself. What's up, and welcome back in. It's Simply Difficult, episode number 6. Welcome in. I'm your host, Sam Speck. Glad you guys are joining us here on YouTube, SoundCloud, across many different social media platforms as well, coming at you here on social media. We're going to try and get out on as many different podcast platforms, or really just listening areas that you can possibly be a part. For now, we're a part of the free ones, easily accessible, YouTube, SoundCloud. Again, follow us on all of the social medias, and if you would like to get in contact with us personally, we do have an email down here, simply-difficult@outlook.com. You can send us a rebirth date, actually. We've got a handful of rebirth dates within the last week since our last episode, and now as we inch into the new month of March here in 2021, we've got some celebrating to do with a handful of folks here. Of course, you can stay completely unanimous. You can share a story. You can share some advice, or again, for those that might be in the profession of addiction counseling or in rehabilitation, I'd love you to be a part of the show as well. So you can send that email to simply-difficult@outlook.com. We love the outreach that we have received so far. A lot of folks just really with well wishes. Obviously, a lot of rebirth dates as well. You can stay completely unanimous. Just use your first name. You can even just use your location. Unanimous from wherever is this amount clean. But we'll get to birthdays at the very end and a nice little celebration as we go off. But here on episode number 6, it's just going to be me today. No guest. We do thank our guest from episode 5, Mark from Colorado, joining us, really getting into an emotional kind of episode. Really, it was a realization episode for both him and I. We do have quite a bit of history between the two of us. So I obviously did bring on a pal of mine, but he is also going through the struggles that I believe a lot of us are out there. So that is right. This is a recovery podcast. It's for addiction. It's alcoholics. It's those that, again, addiction is a wide range of things, but those just that can't quite grasp their life over doing one thing or another. Me personally, and a lot of the conversation that you are going to hear today and throughout the episodes to come will include drugs and alcohol conversations. So not necessarily for a child to be listening to. However, again, this might be a conversation or might be a piece of advice that you want to pass down. So at the same time, not necessarily a child episode, not necessarily a child show by any means, but again, this is something that affects a lot more Americans, a lot more people worldwide than I think individuals are willing to accept. So this is going to be just really a first step for a lot of people, a transference. I in no way consider myself a professional. If anything, a professional drug user. I am also in recovery. I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. I have been clean now for nearly 3 months. I had a bigger streak than that right after I got out of the rehab center that I was going through. But really, my biggest streak is still under a year. So I am very fresh into this. I don't consider myself a professional. However, again, what I am good at, which is speaking and, again, hopefully transferring what I have learned onto you. You at home can pick up maybe a bit of advice or maybe just something that feels comfortable to be a part of. AA meetings can sometimes, especially in smaller towns, I've lived in smaller towns, lived in bigger towns. Bigger towns, of course, you kind of have a different set of groups and different set of anonymous groups that you could go to, whether it's NACA, AA, there's usually different ones, and you can kind of find the core group that fits you the best within that. In smaller communities, there might be just a couple of groups, and unfortunately, you don't always meld with those individuals, and that's fine. That's okay. However, you still need to put your recovery first. So that's going to be something that we really focus on today is recovery first. Recovery comes first. And as we continue on in our step work here on Simply Difficult in Episode 6, really, we're still on just Step 1, kind of transferring into Step 2. In the first few episodes, we did go over what Step 1 was and how I consider it to be a two-part piece. Because, it's not just about realizing that you do have an issue. It's not just about realizing that, man, maybe I use a little bit more. Maybe I just can't control this other than the folks around me. But it's also about the initiative that you start to put into action, change to that. Because there are individuals out there, and again, no discredit to them. For years, I lived this way too, that just aren't ready to accept it yet. And meaning that they aren't just ready to accept it yet is that they don't think that there's anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with the way that they're living right now. And to be honest, it's okay. There will be a realization. And unfortunately, those who wait and wait and wait, the years to pass, I'm a younger individual, and I have only been told because of my youth that I have an easier path than maybe somebody that has spent 20, 30, 40 years underneath the same routine in and out. So again, it's on your own journey. It's on your own path. But again, this is just another safe place that you can come and be a part of my recovery, your recovery, or maybe a loved one of yours recovery as well if you are kind of looking from the outside in and want some information. So this is Simply Difficult. I'm your host, Sam Speck. Glad you guys have joined us. So again, really the theme for today's show, recovery comes first. We're going to be looking into Step 1 into Step 2. So really Step 1's kind of behind us at this point. We're going to be looking more into Step 2, into Step 3 even, and kind of, again, also realizing that we are at the beginning stages of our recovery. Me especially, I'm going through this myself, and many other individuals out there, or for those that have, these beginning months are awkward. They're very unsure. It's a lack of confidence, really, is what I have been feeling. And there's a lot of temptation. And there's resisting that temptation. And long-term recovery comes with a lot of those things of resisting temptation. So we've got a lot of readings today on resisting temptation just because, again, we are at the beginning stages of the program, beginning steps of the 12-step program, whether it's in the AA book, which we will be reading out of today, NA book. We'll also take a look out of that. We've got a lot of information from CA, Again, we do ourselves are not a part of any anonymous group individually. We just consider ourselves your step right before, because that is important to still get out there into a group. Maybe it's a Zoom group for right now, or maybe it's something within your community. You need to get out. You need to speak to others, a larger group than just listening to hear on us or within the comments down below. You do need to get out there. And whether this is your fourth step or maybe just something that, fills the time in between, we appreciate you joining us here, but we always encourage that, again, you find yourself a sponsor. You find yourself a good core group, whether it's an anonymous group or a different set of friends that you are going to be able to focus on your recovery with. So recovery comes first. That's our theme today. Let's, of course, get through what we always do here at the beginning. We're going to go through how it works in just a moment. It's on page 58 in your big book. I believe it's right around page 58, and even the smaller ones as well. But for the traditional AA big book, it will be on page 58. So we're going to go through how it works. We're going to take a quick check-in from the last week since we checked in with you last. Of course, we had a guest last week. That was a very emotional episode. I think he himself, our guest, had a lot of realizations, and just good conversation, truly was. And again, I encourage you can stay completely anonymous. It feels good to talk, and it is good to talk, and I would love to be a part of your conversation and help both of us through this process. Simply-difficult@outlook.com. It's as simple as a FaceTime, a Skype, whatever it may be, or even just a message through the email. We'd love to have you on there. So how it works coming up, moment of silence, and then we'll get into the Serenity Prayer as well. We'll check in on our last couple of weeks, and then we will get into today's items that we're going to go through. Again, the theme for today, recovery comes first. But let's get into this real quick. Let's figure out how it works.
Here's how it works.
Folks, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates, and they're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take these certain steps. At some of these we did balk. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, our own way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we're dealing with drugs and alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power, and that one is God. And may you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon, and here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Step number 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, became to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Number 3, made a decision to turn over our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves for 4. And number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6 includes entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of characters, and 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. Then 8 and 9 include making a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all, followed by 9, making those direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when you would do so, injuring them or others. Number 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when wrong, promptly admitted it. Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we know him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And the final step, having a spiritual awakening. As the result of these prior steps, we tried to carry this message to other alcoholics and addicts to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What in order? I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We're not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. All right, again, thanks for listening through that. That's the How It Works little piece that I put together. A little bit easier for me. Obviously, it's not just having to continually read through that every single episode, and obviously there's times where I do read through it pretty well. So I got that one recorded there, and a nice little piece of production that I actually had fun making. So that is How It Works. Of course, you can always follow along on page 58 of your big book. That is the AA book. But here as we start off, let's go ahead and actually just look back on our last couple of weeks, as we always do here, and you can reflect yourself. And really, whether it comes down to just mental notes, me personally, I actually need to write these notes in order to really not necessarily remember it, but to comprehend it, to really absorb that information and take it down. So this is a time where we just look back and reflect. What are some things that we've been doing well within our recovery? What are some things that we need to continue to do, something to be proud about? And that's important. Instead of looking back on your past 7 days and saying, damn, I did horrible these last weeks, and really beat yourself and really just, hammer down and get to the esteem and just, it's not the good positive attitude that you really need to have in order to sustain long-term recovery. Because again, when you just beat down on yourself, batter down, you know what it feels like. And then that excuse or that temptation becomes a little bit easier to maybe go back and use, or to go back and do whatever that feeds your addiction. So, again, we just kind of look back and look more about the positives. Now, again, we do, here in just a moment, set goals for ourselves. Now, when you're setting goals for yourself, I think this is a good time to look back and reflect. Not look back and demean yourself. Not look back and hound on yourself. I am my own worst enemy. I always have been. That's one of the biggest things that I have had to try and teach myself is to forgive myself. To not fucking just worry about the past as much as I possibly can. And that's what I do. I worry about those times that times that I'm disappointed in, whether it really affected that person or not. And to be honest, I think I'm a good friend. I think I have sustained friendships in my life. I really don't burn bridges. But again, there's a lot of times where maybe I do something to an individual and it actually impacts me more than them because I look at the way that I acted or I look at the way that maybe it was perceived by that individual. And whether it impacted them or not, I take it personally. And it makes the temptation a little bit easier when you are just hounding on yourself. So instead of when you're setting goals, looking back and saying, damn, I didn't do that, so maybe I should do something else, but say, what can I improve upon? And that is an achievable goal because obviously you were doing something that necessarily wasn't your goal. It wasn't the thing that you were wanting to do. So when you're looking back on your week, instead of again, pushing yourself into negativity, you need to say, what have I done well, first of all? And then second of all, what can I do a little bit better in the next 7 days? And then, of course, join us here on this next episode. So, of course, my name is Sam Speck. I am an alcoholic and a drug addict. Thank you. And again, welcome in. Let's first go ahead and take a moment of silence, and then we'll take a look at the Serenity Prayer, check in on our last couple of weeks, and then get into today's topic. So real quick, moment of silence, and then we'll follow with the Serenity Prayer. And you can follow if you'd like. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, again, let's just check in on our last couple of weeks. And since we've joined you last, it was an emotional episode last time. We do, again, thank our guests that did come on. Thank you so much for just being open and maybe realizing some things that you can take home and improve upon your relationship. Seems like something and somebody that you care for. So you really need to make those changes, and you really need to, again, be that person that takes that initiative to make those changes. It's tough. It's tough looking from the outside in, but it is worth it in the end. So again, we thank you for joining us, and you can join us here on simply-difficult@outlook.com, and we can reflect on our weeks together. But for now, again, if you're just at home, whether it's a piece of paper that you need to write it down so you can comprehend it or really reflect upon it and be a part of it, or if you can take mental notes at home, what are some things that you've done well in the last couple of weeks? And for me personally, obviously, I've stayed away from heavy narcotics. That's just a simple goal for me. And in a long sense, yeah, it has been simple because of the way that I've moved away, or because I separated myself from a situation of isolation, of a worse situation. I separated myself and got into a better situation. So it was almost an inevitability that it was going to be a little bit better, certainly a little bit better. It was difficult at the beginning, certainly, but I think that's how everybody is when they're going through the first beginning stages of your separation from your addiction. Yeah, certainly. But at the same time, I think it was an inevitability that it was going to be a little easier than being alone and not using. However, again, it's an easy goal for me to pat myself on the back and look back upon these last 7 weeks and be proud of it. In the last 7 days, I haven't used any heavy narcotics. Have I smoked weed? Absolutely. I still do that. I'm still using Kratom on an every now basis as well to kind of help me with my withdrawals, or really just, I have actually found it useful during the daytime and being, energetic and being focused within that manner. Now, of course, I'm trying to wean away from things. I hate, displacing one and just taking one thing and replacing it with another. It's not necessarily what I'm trying to do or what I'm trying to push across in a message to those out there listening. But for me, it has worked. It has been useful, I guess, is a better way to put it. So in the last couple of weeks, again, I have stayed clean from heavy narcotics. And let's go ahead and, again, I think just positivity. I think overall just my mood has been better. And again, that's something that to be happy about, because I think a lot of us really relish in, and we look back in the past and you say, damn, I had a bad day, or damn, I had a bad couple of days. But you don't really remember the happy moments. You say, fuck, I had a horrible day, or it's just your emotions are running so wild, and for some reason, when you look back in your memory, that's the only thing that you can remember is the down, is the bad, is the depression, is the anxiety. You never look back and you say, man, it was a beautiful day the other day. I was outside, I was enjoying the time. Maybe it was a 10, 15-second pocket of your life, but you'd never look back and enjoy those moments. So I think overall, in terms of what it was 3-4 months ago, yeah, my energy, my overall, just enjoyment of life has improved. And that's a goal that I think all of us need to not necessarily hound on, but keep in mind, really keep in mind and say, I deserve happiness. I need to be happy every day. You don't need to overwork yourself. You don't need to try and overly distract yourself. But at the same time, it is as simple as just, even within the name, simply difficult, because there's those temptations, those things that are going to make you resist maybe going into those temptations. It's a simple program. It's a simple theory to just not use. However, it's incredibly difficult to execute that. So the last couple of weeks, again, yeah, I think I have obviously not used. I've been a little bit happier. And overall, it's just, positive within those manners. Now, again, there are some things that I can look ahead and write some goals upon. I need to, again, get to more physical meetings. Now, of course, in times of 2020, the fucked year that was, 2021 now, we are getting to be a little bit more open, a little bit more able to go out and meet in a public place. But at the same time, I have, done Zoom meetings. I need to get into a physical meeting. I think me personally, I learn, I comprehend, I take in information a little bit better when I am actually there in person. Now, of course, I've been working a lot. I've been trying to keep up with the show. I've been busy, and there's excuses after this left and right. But again, recovery comes first. And that's my goal. I need to get to more physical meetings, not Zoom meetings, not things online, not this. I need to get to physical meetings. I'm in a new place. I'm in a new location. It's a wide open book. It's an empty canvas of things that possibly could be positive for me if I just continue to go with my recovery. And even for those that might have a little bit of a messy canvas, where something you've stepped on it a couple of times, or you've been in and out a couple of times, or whatever it may be, you can always, like a bad tattoo. If you have a good enough artist, if you have good enough dedication, if you have a good enough idea, you can bury that underneath whatever is to come. You'll be able to blossom out into something better than what it was, because your past is not who you are. You are who you are right now. Your past certainly kind of defines the way that people might think of you, the way that they last saw you, but that's not the way that you are now. So don't think of it that way. You aren't that person. You're a new person now. And again, I need to get to more physical meetings. I need to be able to communicate. That's the way that I comprehend information and the way that I take in information better. I'm a hands-on guy, really am. So I have to be in that manner. But yeah, one goal for me, got to get to more meetings. I've got a work schedule now. I'm on a little bit more of a better schedule. I think another goal, just looking into the next couple of weeks, really, is to just, we've spoken about this in the last couple of weeks and the last couple of shows as well. I struggled with my heavy sleeping. I mean, when I wake up, it's like either I went through a fucking mind fuck of a dream, or I just, want to sleep in until 11, or I don't get any sleep at all. I need to kind of realize that might be a part of my reality for a little while. Maybe it's going to be 6, 7, 8 months. Maybe it's going to be over a year. Maybe it's just going to be another month. I don't know. But I think I need to realize that that's going to be a part of my reality for a while. But I need to get on a better schedule. I need to wake up more consistently. Maybe it's yoga in the morning. Maybe it's a walk. Maybe it's something. Again, I'm not a guy that goes and exercises in the gym. I don't pump iron. I really don't strain myself that much. However, I'm a very physical person. Got a lot of energy pent up. And it's not healthy for me to be laying in bed for 2 days straight and then just overly energized for 3 or 4. Bed for 2 days, overly energized for 3 or 4. I need to build a consistency within the way that I wake up and the way that I use my energy in the morning and throughout the day, and get on a better schedule in that manner. And then we work on the appetite, and then we work on all of that. Again, small steps, easy steps, and legitimate goals. Because you don't want to look at your goals in front of you and give yourself too difficult of something. Start small, start simple. Just as I said, I haven't used in the last 7 days. Goal, check that one off the list. right? And maybe you have. Maybe you slipped up. Maybe you relapsed last 3 days. So you say, I haven't used in the last 48 hours. You need to find yourself a goal that you can be proud of and one that you can cross off, and then one that you reflect on in the last 7 days that you can certainly improve upon in the next week or so. So, all right, well, again, whether you have to write it down or just take mental notes, just look upon and reflect on your last couple of weeks. So let's get into this now. We're going to look through the Narcotics Anonymous book first, so the NA book. I think this is the standard size, so you can follow along if you would like here on page 21, I believe we're going to go on to. So this is, more into step 2 here. This is that realization, right? Step 1, you already had it. You knew that you had the realization. You knew that you had a problem. Maybe you took the initiative. Maybe you did already go in through rehab once, twice, 3 times. I don't know. Maybe you are just outside the doorsteps of a rehab facility. But again, you are still in your mind, fully blown into your addiction, but you are having that battle on a daily basis. There was fucking times where I would be in my head all morning long. You don't need a drink today. You don't need anything like that. 11 o'clock came around, lunch break hits. Liquor stores are open, and somehow I'm in the liquor store parking lot. It's just, it's a cycle. It is. Even if you tell yourself in the morning that you don't need it, and then you find yourself wondering what the fuck you're doing there. Then you already have the bottle. Then the bottle's open, and what the hell, you take a sip. And then after that, you have to finish the pint. Then you have to finish the 750. It's a brutal cycle. It truly is. So, there's a couple of readings here within this. This will be on page 21 of the NA book. We'll go ahead and read through a couple of paragraphs and then, of course, interpret them ourselves. So, a second admission must be made before our foundation is complete. If we stop here, again, this is right after the fact that we complete step 1. If we stop right here, we will only know half the truth. We are great ones for manipulating the truth. I don't know if any of you out there are a master manipulator as a drug user or somebody that, again, maybe has to hide it, because there are those out there where, unfortunately, you grew up with it around you. Maybe your parents used, maybe it was your brother, maybe it was the house that you grew up in, and that's just part of the norm. And unfortunately, it was part of the way that you grew up, and you maybe had to learn different, or maybe you never learned at all. And you're just trying to get out of those. But this is, manipulation turns into a whole different thing on that level. But then for those that maybe this was like a taboo. It's exactly how my house was. Drug use was a taboo in my house. It wasn't acceptable. It wasn't anything that was going to be on the table at any point in time. If anything, this was the worst fucking thing that was on the planet, was any drug use whatsoever. Was the way that it was put across. Alcohol was fine. It was always fine. But drugs, they were this huge taboo in my house. And my curiosity came about, and I knew of the taboo. I knew of the attitude that these people had. So the amount of lies, the amount of stories, of manipulation, of deceiving that I went through just even at a young age through high school to try and experiment with things. And then even at an older age, you become a veteran. You become a seasoned liar. I always considered myself that I wasn't a liar, but I just never told the whole truth. And I had a great way of going around it. I had a great way of not telling the whole truth. I told you what happened, but I had a great manipulation, just way of getting around telling you everything that you probably needed to hear. So we say on one hand, yes, I am powerless over my addiction. And on the other hand, when I get my life together, I can handle drugs, right? Maybe when I get out of a different situation, maybe when I move, maybe when I get back with, my parents, where something with stability, then maybe I can use then. Or maybe when I just flush all of this out of my system, maybe I can have another drink then. Listen to me. This is something that I have learned very quickly when I first got out of rehab is, when I got out of rehab, it was like, man, I haven't touched anything. I'm going to be fine. I've got all of this confidence. A couple of days sets in, and that confidence turns into a little bit of cockiness. That cockiness adds to your ego, and your ego stands there and says, we can do one, right? We can do a little bit. And as an addict, you need to accept the fact that you cannot have a single fucking drink or a single fucking pill. That was the downfall for me within my relapse. I had one pill, and after that, it went into a fucking spiral. Unbelievable. I can't have one. I can't have one. And for you out there listening, you can't either. Okay? Our brains have been completely rewired. The roads have been completely repaved. There's nothing that you can do about it right now. And maybe in, I hate to say it, 20 years, you can have a fucking beer. But for right now, alcohol is power. You are powerless to alcohol. You are powerless to the drugs. You are powerless to the addiction that you have. Such thoughts and actions led us back to active addiction. Again, it adds to the cockiness, adds to the ego, adds to your overall attitude towards being clean. It's like, I got an ego after 3 months. It's like, damn, 3 months clean. Whatever. Beer, no problem. Smoking weed, no problem. It's a ridiculous cycle. Ridiculous. If we can't control our addiction, how can we ever control our lives? We felt miserable without drugs, and our lives were unmanageable. Unemployability, dereliction, and destruction are easily seen as characteristics of an unmanageable life. Our families are generally disappointed, baffled, and confused by our actions, and often desert or disown us. Now, those are some pretty heavy words, because disappointment, I think, is one of those that really stabs everybody. Desert and disown, that's a pretty bold statement. I think of a parent. I really can't really think of any parent that would just throw somebody out on the street. And that is, again, why we are trying to have these conversations. Because, again, if it's a major taboo, wasn't a huge taboo in my house, but certainly was, but to the point where they can't handle that fact. They can't handle it. And you don't have any other place to go to. That's what we're trying to mediate this conversation for. It's an incredibly difficult situation. It's an incredibly difficult conversation to have with a loved one. But maybe someone is in a hole, and you need to be able to communicate with them. So I haven't really heard of any parents that are just going to desert, disown, whichever. Maybe it takes them a little bit longer to realize, but you, hopefully, in their eyes, are their child. But at the same time, you also have to realize it's not up to them. It's not them that's going to get you clean. It's not, maybe there was money, maybe there was whatever. It takes you not fucking doing what you were doing to finally get past it. Doesn't matter if your parents are there or not. Okay, so you have to realize that. But I think the bigger D within this conversation is disappointment. I think that's something that you can read off of somebody's face. That's something that you don't even have to be told that happened. It might be something that you interpret yourself, and it cuts you a little bit deeper than what maybe even that person had interpreted themselves. Disappointment, baffled and confused by our actions. Disappointment is a natural feeling as a human. So you have to realize that it is okay for them to feel that way. It is completely okay for them to feel that way. But for you, it is up to you to make the changes to maybe make them feel a little bit different. So let's continue on. Becoming employed, socially acceptable, and reunited with our families does not make our lives manageable. Social acceptabilities does not equal recovery. So just because you have all, they say all your ducks in a row or everything on your side of the street clean, you got your side of the street clean, just because you have everything clean. Now, it completely helps. You really do. That is an intricate part of early recovery, is making sure that you have your street clean. But that doesn't mean that it's a guarantee. So don't fall back on it. Don't fall back on that confidence. This is an everyday thing. From the addicts that I have talked to that are 20 years sober, they still tell me, I'm not even a year into this, they still tell me after 20 years, every single day was just like it was. And it is the same battle. It is the same message. Maybe you've become a little bit better with it, a little bit more seasoned, but it's still there. And it's still something that you have to deal with on a daily basis. Last reading here from the NA book, and then we'll move on to the Little Red Book. Surrender means not having to fight anymore. We accept our addiction and life the way it is. We become willing to do whatever is necessary to stay clean, even the things we don't like doing. So, again, recovery comes first. You come first. And it's a perfect segue into this next little part of the AA book here. So we're going to look at the AA book and then the Little Red Book. And then as we enter into our final half hour here and the final few minutes, of course, we'll go through Recovery Comes First. A nice little reading with some pretty good tips and details on boundaries and some things that you might be able to take away with you as we finish up this episode and look towards next week. And, of course, we'll look out of the Little Red Book as well just a little bit. And then at the end of the program, we've got birthdays coming up. We've got, again, you can email me, whether it was, it was the last weekend of April, now into the first weekend of March. And then as we go through March as well, if you have your rebirth date, or, again, whether it's 1 week, 1 month, or, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, all the way up to 12 months, and then beyond the years of that, your rebirth date, I'd love to celebrate with you. We got 4 individuals that have sent us an email and have given us, again, that rebirth date that we'll celebrate with you guys here today. So let's get into this, though. So right as we segue into the AA book, really this isn't any specific part, and in fact, it's right after the how it works. But when you go through this, it's kind of that portion of the reading within the book and within your step work and within the work that you do with your sponsor at the end of step 2 into step 3. Kind of ignore the fact that we might be skipping step 2 momentarily, but at the same time, I would like you to hear just truly how many times the word self is said within these next few readings, because truly it is a selfish experience. Now, every time I hear the word selfish, I think of something that I truly don't like. I don't like to be selfish. I don't like when people are selfish. I like treating myself, I do, but at the same time, I am an empath. I live with an empath. I live with many. My whole family are empathetic, and we are caring individuals. So at the same time, we are giving as much as we are taking for ourselves. But at the same time, I have never really relished on the fact that I'm a selfish person. I don't consider myself selfish. I haven't really lived in that manner. But at the same time, selfish might be a word that you don't really meld with. It's something that you might have to do, and really have to do, actually, to be successful within your recovery. Maybe you don't want to call it selfish. Maybe you would just want to call it self-focused. You're focused on yourself right now. You're not, selfish. You don't have to be self-centered, whatever. Self-focused. You're focused on completely yourself right now. So let's go ahead and read through here. This is, again, right after the how it works on page 60. Again, being convinced that we're at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? The first requirement is that we are convinced that on any life run, self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. Who wants to run the whole show is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. I certainly fall within that category, even if it's in my own mind, even if it's not something that I try and express outwardly. Even, I feel like as a male, or just me as a person personally, I like to be in control of a situation. And when I'm not in control of a situation is usually when I'm most vulnerable, or usually when I'm a little bit on my heels, not necessarily in a comfortable space. I like to be in control of things. And to be honest, you can. And you can be in control of your emotions, you can be in control of yourself, and sometimes that is enough to be in control of the situation around you. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not. And those situations make me uncomfortable. And a lot of individuals out there uncomfortable. So you are kind of the director of your own show. And that's kind of the mindset that you need to turn, not necessarily into your whole motive for life by any means. You don't want to be a selfish individual, but these actions to become, within recovery for long-term amount of time, you need to put yourself first. You need to put these actions first. What is going to be best for this situation? We'll continue on. Everybody, including himself would be pleased. Life would be wonderful in trying to make these arrangements. Our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest, but as with most humans, he is most likely to be varied traits. So everybody's different. Everybody kind of has a different way around it. But at the same time, substance abuse, the overall kind of brain and makeup of addiction is pretty much the same within everybody. Your path, your journey, your personality, the way that you get there, and I don't want to say get to addiction, but the way that you do find yourself into a full-blown addiction is completely different than somebody else out there. I don't think I have ever heard the same two stories of how you maybe got somewhere. Maybe it's more traumatic. Maybe it's more curiosity. Maybe it's more criminality. I don't know. There's a large amount of different variances that come within how you maybe got to where you are today. However, when it happens, everybody's brain and everybody's actions somewhat go through the same process. You are rewiring the way that your body is reacting to that substance, or you are rewiring the way that your brain reacts to that hit of dopamine or that hit of pleasure that is artificial. You have rewired your brain into believing that that is a daily part of life, that is something that it expects to be there. And if it's not, there's a big problem. There's an obvious problem. So everybody has a different journey of getting there, but when you are there, you go through a very similar process. And you have to realize, you can't have one. You can't, maybe in a few years, I'll be fine by then. Maybe if I just take a 2-week break, maybe I just need a tolerance break. Fuck the amount of tolerance breaks I took back in high school to think that would do something, right? If anything, it just was, you take a tolerance break, you hit a bowl of weed after that, you're higher than what you were for a month or two. And to be honest, that was about it. But other than that, your mindset hadn't changed. Your attitude hadn't changed about it. There really wasn't any change. It takes a complete mental overhaul of the way that you think of these things and the way that you act upon what's happening. Now, when you do, whether it's finally find your way into steps 1 and 2, you are going to realize that there's going to be a massive amount of thoughts that go through your heads. Right now, I'm having a lot of fucking dreams that I can't control, but there's a lot of temptations. There's a lot of things that might come over you mentally that is out of your control. Truly, it is. Again, you have been feeding your brain, your body, drugs and substance for the last few years consistently. And now that all of a sudden that you're not, it is pissed. Your body's pissed off. It's not very happy with what the hell is going on here. So here's a good reading for you. This is, again, out of a CA book. It's called A Quiet Peace. This is from a couple of years ago, so it's not the 2021 version, but perfect segue into this. It's called Resisting Temptation. Addicts are not particularly skilled at resisting temptation. It's a big fucking surprise. As a child, when my parents said not to touch the pan because it was hot, that is exactly what I felt compelled to do. In any of the episodes before, all 5 of them before here of episode 6, how many times have I said that a lot of what fed my addiction was purely on curiosity, purely on why is there such a taboo around this particular substance or particular event or whatever it might have been. Somebody tells you it's hot, you still put your hand over it. Maybe you don't touch it, but I think the normal person puts your hand over it. It's like the speed limit, right? The speed limit is what they say. However, most people use that as the baseline. If your speed limit's 35, that's your baseline, right? And then 35 to 40, whatever. But you are still, again, tempted to get to that 35 in some way or another. 30 to 35, as much as it pisses me off. I have the worst fucking road rage. If we're in a 35 zone and you're going 30, I hate it. But again, you think of the way that the human mind works. For some reason, I turn that 35 into my baseline. The speed limit's irrelevant to me anymore. It's called the baseline. Continuing, I felt a strong desire to still use drugs. It seemed more powerful than anything else. I saw others like me give in and get high. Sometimes it took every ounce of strength I had just to hold on and not use. I worked the steps, went to meetings, I asked God for help, and still nothing seemed to work to relieve those thoughts. As time passed, I began to realize that these challenges were, in fact, opportunities for me to take responsibility for my own recovery. Again, how many times are we going to say this? Regardless of what situation that you are in, maybe you have rich fucking parents that can buy you every rehabilitation center in the world. You get sent there 15 times. If you're not ready mentally, and if you are not going to take that change spiritually, you're not going to fucking change. And I know that is a brutal thing to hear, but you need to be willing to change. There's got to be something, maybe a voice. Maybe it's not really within your actions just yet, but there's got to be something in your head that tells you every day, I've got a problem and I want to change it. I truly want to change it. Maybe you slipped up. Maybe you relapsed, but that voice is still in there. That's good. But there are some addicts out there who have loved ones, who have a situation that they can get out of that situation a lot easier, but they truly don't want to. It's unfortunate the amount of athletes, big-time athletes, or Hollywood stars, or whoever it may be, they have all the money, all the means in the world, and they just don't want to change. It doesn't matter. It comes down to you wanting to change. It doesn't matter about your situation. Other anonymous groups and other mind-altering substances were no longer a temptation, but a repulsive thought. I felt a tremendous relief and freedom. My higher power had been with me the whole time. He was just waiting for me to catch on. It is never too late to take responsibility for your recovery. I have choices today because I'm sober. Without drugs, I'm free. So a little bit of inspiration there on that one. But again, a lot of temptations is what you're going to be getting week in, week out, day in, day out. Sometimes it's minute by minute. Sometimes it's moment by moment that you have to take it with. But resisting those temptations and, again, putting your recovery first. So let's go through here this little worksheet and some tips before we get out of here. We got about 15 minutes before we have to step aside. Again, only 1 hour long, and we really encourage you to really be a part of these meetings in person. That's a reason why we have How It Works at the beginning. And, of course, how we go over our week are the Serenity Prayer, Moment of Silence, and, of course, keeping it 1 hour long. It's going to be a very similar feel for when you finally take that first step into an AA meeting. This is exactly what you are going to feel when you step in there, maybe a little bit more comfortable, maybe a little bit more inclined to actually speak, learn something, and take something home with you. So whether this is something to fill the time in between meeting to meeting or this is your first step there, we do encourage you to find, there's many different apps. I think it's called Find a Meeting. Not a sponsor yet, but at the same time, Find a Meeting. I use that app on my smartphone. There's fucking thousands of different ones. And whether you're in a smaller community or a bigger one, again, there's usually something out there of an anonymous group within every community. Thousands of them nationwide, worldwide. And it's an unfeasible amount of people that suffer from this on a daily basis, on an every year basis that suffer from it. Here in the United States, and I think in a lot of different places worldwide, there was obviously the crack epidemic back in the 80s and 90s. Now we're going through a severe opiate epidemic as well. I think a lot of methamphetamine is being used in different regions of the United States. And, of course, a lot of these drugs, including now fentanyl, is coming up from different areas and trying to infiltrate these. So there's a lot of different things that you are going to be met with, a lot of different things that are out there now that, it's just going to continue to evolve. And like a virus, you have to treat your recovery like it's the antiviral, right? The antiviral, you just have to stay one step ahead of it. That virus is always going to be there. It's always going to be evolving. You just have to stay one step ahead of it. So let's go ahead and look at this little reading here. And then, of course, we'll get to our birthdays at the very end. We've got a little sign-off, and then we'll look ahead into next week as well. But recovery comes first. Absolutely, it does. Again, we mentioned today out of the AA reading, right near that How It Works page, selfishness. It's a trait that I don't really like to call and absorb in myself. I don't like to call myself selfish. But this is a selfish act that you need to do, right? You need to do. Maybe maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your best friend, maybe it's your uncle, your aunt, whichever. They're just having a little get-together. It's a huge graduation. It's a huge celebration. This is the biggest moment of their life. There's going to be alcohol there. There's going to be maybe something there that you just can't be around. Okay, yeah, that moment was missed. And that moment might be taken a little bit sourly by those individuals that you missed out on. But you made this decision for you. There was alcohol there. Maybe there was something there that wasn't completely legal, that was going to be diced out and chopped up on a bathroom counter in the back scene. And just because it's there, you can't fucking resist it. I had that huge problem. There was many times where it was just like, I'm not going to buy any cocaine tonight. Oh, but there's cocaine there. I'll do it if it's free. Right? If it's free, I'll do it. That's going to be the same situation. If you need to separate your situation and be selfish in that moment, it's okay for them. They'll get over it. They will. If they don't, that's when you make that decision if that's the person that you would like to be a part of your recovery cycle. Is this person somebody that you would like to continue on with on your path? But recovery comes first. Most of us are raised to believe that being selfish is wrong, and for the most part, it is. However, when you are in recovery, you must be selfish about your recovery acts. Your recovery has got to come first above anything and anyone. That includes, but is not limited to, your family, job, interests, pretty much fucking everything. If you do put your recovery first and you fall into the proverbial wagon, what good are you going to be to any of them? Again, at the end of the day, this is your journey, this is your path, this is your battle. So really, what the fuck does it matter? So quite often, many people hear, I can't do this because I have kids, I can't do this because I don't drive, I can't seek recovery because my family would be embarrassed. I can't do this because of a handful of different excuses after. And the truth is, if you allow excuses to keep you from your recovery, then you are not truly ready to take those steps. Again, there's going to be, regardless of your situation, maybe you have the financials to go through 15 different rehabilitation centers. Take 10 years of your life. It sometimes does. And I'm not bashing that on by any means, but I'm just trying to really push the message into your mind is it doesn't matter until that individual is ready to make that change. Until he or she has that full message inside their brain that they are going to change, or they want to change at least, is when they finally start to take those steps. They're still going to slip up after that. Just because you have now decided that you're going to maybe get yourself better, maybe get yourself healthy, doesn't mean that you're not going to slip up and maybe go back upon. But at the same time, it takes that first step. Again, we're right at the first step 1 and 2 here of our step work, of our book work, and here of episodes on Simply Difficult. And again, it's difficult. It's difficult to maybe put yourself into a selfish attitude, but it's something that you have to do. The truth is, if you allow excuses to keep you from your recovery, you're not truly ready. We just said that. In order to get sober and walk into long-term recovery, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes and do the work necessary. If you do not do the work, then you don't have anybody to blame but really yourself. Recovery is not a party. It's not easy. And a lot of times, again, it's no fun. We just mentioned a scenario a moment ago. Nice party, graduation, maybe a big celebration. It's my niece's graduation from college. This is a big thing. It's a one-time thing. I couldn't make it because of this particular thing. There was going to be 80 other people there. You can't just because of me, you can't keep the margarita bar out. You know, you can't. Maybe if you were personally a little bit more ready to go, you could separate yourself from the bar. But there are a lot of individuals, just because there is alcohol there or there is something there, that they should not be in that environment. You shouldn't be in that atmosphere. And you have to separate yourself. You do. So a lot of times it's not fun. You have family functions to go to, feel pressure to attend. And if you feel like you're walking into a drunk or a drug trap, do not go. It's that simple. And this is a perfect example of putting your recovery first. If people don't understand, again, it's kind of brutal, but it's not your fucking problem. It's not. Your problem is getting yourself clean. If you don't go and you start to feel uncomfortable or tempted, leave. And this is why, again, I try and encourage you to get out to one of these public meetings. Get to an AA meeting. Get to something that is in your community or somebody that you can talk to physically. Hit them up on the phone. Meet up with them down at your gas station right down the road. Maybe you can't drive. Where's somewhere that we can meet or I can walk to? Where's a park that I can go to? I need to talk to you and get out of this certain situation. Your sponsor will be there. If they are truly dedicated into sponsoring that individual and into the 12-step program, they will be there. They will. And there's a lot of times where your parent really isn't the one that you want to call. Maybe it's a loved one. Maybe it's a brother. Maybe it's somebody that you tell everything to, and they're not an addict. They're not somebody that has gone through this yet. You need to talk to that sponsor. You need to talk to that individual. If people don't understand, again, it's not your problem. Family does seem embarrassed sometimes. Disappointed, not your problem. Your only concern, again, is your recovery. If you let anyone or anything get in the way of that, you will surely fail. We are useless to others and ourselves if we allow anything to get into the way. Last couple of paragraphs here, and then we'll get into our birthdays and our little send-offs as well. About 5 minutes left. But we cannot control people, places, situations, or anything. There's a lot of sayings, but there is one that is really pushed hard upon in any recovery group, is you have to live life on life's terms. That's just a big piece of advice, whether you are in an addiction, an active addiction, in and out of it, or maybe something completely fucking different, but just has a grasp on your life that you would like to make a change of. You have to realize that life is going to happen. And just because it did happen doesn't make it an excuse, right? For me, personally, there was many times where it was a great fucking day, right? Oh, you had a good day at work. Man, I just feel great. The Yankees won today. My teams are up. I'm doing good. My sports bets are in. I'm in the green. All of this jazz. and you're having a great day. Shots it is, man. Drinks it is. Oh, man, I feel inclined to do it. Maybe I got paid today. Or maybe it's on the other side of the spectrum. You had a bad day. Damn, I got a speeding ticket, popped a tire, did all of this. Man, I deserve this. I deserve a beverage today. I deserve a little pill today. I deserve a little line, a little pick-me-up today, a bowl of smoke. It's, again, regardless of what it may be, good, bad, any side of the spectrum, you need to be able to put this recovery first. And you, whether it's calling an individual, whether it's separating yourself from that in particular atmosphere, environment, you need to be able to get over it and do whatever it takes to stay in recovery. Sure, again, that may sound easy as I say it, right? Easy as I say it, just leave the situation. But there's a lot of times where emotionally, again, if it is a family member, if it's somebody that you truly care about, you know, and you really don't want to let them down, maybe that's a graduation. Man, I just couldn't miss that. I told them that I was going to be there, and you missed it. That's hard to take emotionally. It really is, but you have to realize that it's for a bigger cause. It's for your cause. That's what it's for. All right, let's get into our birthdays here, and then a little spiritual reading before we get out of here. So, again, this is from the 27th of April to the 6th of March. If you've had a rebirth date within that last 7 days, again, we had actually 4 individuals give us a nice little email and report us on their rebirth date. So congratulations, first and foremost, but simply-difficult@outlook.com. That's how you can be a part of the program, whether you would like to Skype, FaceTime, or just be a part of our program like we had last week. You could be a professional within addiction counseling or rehabilitation. You could be somebody that is also going through recovery just as I am in your first couple of months, first couple of steps, or maybe you're a veteran. You've got 15, you got 10, you got 5 years of sobriety underneath your belt. We would love to hear from you. And we would love to have you be a part of our program and overall part of our network and reach of trying to get out there and help individuals that are affected by this wild disease, allergy, whatever you want to call this fucking morbid thing that is addiction. So let's get through it here. So here's a couple of birthdays for you. Again, from the 27th of April into the 6th of... where the hell am I right now? February 27th. I wrote 4 on here for some reason. We're not even close. February 27th to March 6th, excuse me. I don't know why I put 4 there, but I confused myself. From February 27th to March 6th, we have some rebirth dates. Colin from Arizona, 6 years, man. Colin, I'd love to hear from you again. If you'd like to be a part of the program, again, hit us up. We've got FaceTime, Skype, any of those, or if you would just like to leave your message or your piece of advice down there as well. Jackson from California is 2 months clean within this last week. Unanimous, actually, from Kansas. That is where we are currently deployed out of here on Simply Difficult. But Unanimous, no name, that's okay. 1 year here in Kansas. And then Martin, didn't give a location, but Martin, if you're out there listening again, 6 months clean, and a congratulations to you. So Colin from Arizona also gave a little piece of advice that was nice. It was actually just more kind of a quote, but he says, I look back and I remember all of the, here, let me see. Let me try and get it up here. Pull up this email. Okay, so I look back and I remember all of people bragging about their drinking skills like it's something impressive. Would you like to impress me? Try not drinking, sitting with your feelings and improving your life. I love that. I don't know if it's his originally or if it's a quote that maybe he has taken in and really absorbed in his life and uses it, but that's something to pass along to you. Again, that looking back personally, again, I always thought I was untouchable. I thought my kind of, level of the amount that I could drink, the amount of drugs that I could do, the amount of shit that I did in one sitting. You know, you feel untouchable. You feel impressive, man. It's like that this is some kind of goal, right? Yeah, no, it's pretty difficult to then sit down and finally be sad for the first time in a long time. Have you done that yet? Have you been sad recently? Have you had a good cry? Have you had a good moment to be emotional recently? That's something that you need to do. So, Colin, thank you so much. And thank you all out there who, again, have reached out on our email, simply-difficult@outlook.com. and giving us your rebirth date, whether it's your rebirth date, whether it's just being a part of the show, giving some advice, or actually being a part of it, whether it's on Skype, FaceTime, doesn't matter to me. We'd love to have you a part of our shows in the weeks to come. So as we start off this new month of March now, again, stay sober, stay safe. And truly, we'd love for you to reach out, but most importantly, get yourself out there to a meeting. AA meeting, NA meeting, CA meeting, doesn't matter. Get yourself a sponsor. Reach out here to simply-difficult@outlook.com, and let's get sober together. So that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next week here on Simply Difficult.
Hey, thanks again for joining me today. And see, an hour wasn't so bad. So get yourself to an actual AA meeting, rehab, or other anonymous groups. Meet a sponsor, new friends, and learn how to talk about this Simply Difficult journey to recovery. Because I know how difficult it is. When a substance dictates how good or bad your day is going to be, how it controls how you feel, and when it holds on to you, how you as a person changes. Dishonesty, manipulation, and no control of emotion. Well, I see you, and if it feels like nothing else can help, come join me next time on Simply Difficult.